Yo, 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 what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another weekly episode of the Vols ATB podcast. Me, Brando, and Drew back on another Wednesday night. Jam-packed episode. Didn't have an episode last weekend before the Georgia game, but we're going to hop into
Try to
Brando.
try to
Oh, there you go. Okay. All right. You were
yeah,
quiet there for a couple seconds, but we're good now.
yeah uh, on brand for the technical difficulties. But yeah, some
Of
Georgia
course.
recap. Gonna hop into that game. Tennessee falls to Georgia 31-17 in Athens. We're gonna break that one down, and then just what the overall overlook for Tennessee going in. 2 weeks left in the season, trying to finish 10-2, trying to be on the outside looking in for the college football playoff. We'll break that all down. But Drew, Tennessee goes down to Athens. Drops the game 31-17, ultimately losing in Athens. Tennessee started off the game up 14-0, and then we kind of saw everything go wrong from there. Tennessee's offense was clicking in the first, but a lot of us were kind of wondering where was that Tennessee defense when it came down to it.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably it's like what I was telling Bob Baskerville over the Rocky Top Insider and co-host of the Neutral Zone on Fan Run Radio. I was telling this was probably the best first quarter that Tennessee's played since, I mean, honestly, maybe 2022 versus LSU, especially considering on the road and all things given. You start off hot, you score in the opening drive, you get a 10-0 lead, and it really should have been a 14-0 lead had Boo Carter, broke that tackle from the punter in that punt return. But man, I mean, it's just the same old story goes when it comes to Tennessee and playing on the road. I mean, it's just I just felt like overall there wasn't really any adjustments both on the offensive side and defensive side of the ball. We weren't really blitzing that much, and I know that we're dealing with some depth issues in the linebacker position, but you didn't see us really put any pressure on Carson Beck at all. Our defensive line was surprisingly non-existent the entire game, and I don't even think we recorded a single sack, and it was only a couple tackle for losses that recorded, but didn't put enough pressure. We made him, he had all the time in the world. And I mean, the thing is like we weren't aggressive on the offensive side of the ball in the second half. I mean, the one play that has me, circling back in my mind is, that 4th and 6 on Georgia's 35, 36-yard line, the opening, drive of the second half. And instead of going for it and being aggressive and trying to get a first down, we take a delay game, we punt the ball, and Georgia goes on a 7-minute drive and scores and takes the lead and doesn't look back. And that's the thing you got to do in these type of games. And it's incredibly frustrating because it's just the same story every single time we play a big road game, whether it was Arkansas or South Carolina or Missouri last year, especially, and it's just, you got to be aggressive in these games. You can't take it for granted like a home game where you can just scrape by with a win with the atmosphere in your defense. And so, very disappointing performance, but give credit where it's due, though. Georgia absolutely played the best game of the entire year for themselves. And, I mean, that's a damn good football team. I mean, that's the reason why Kirby Smart's probably the best coach in college football. And this is the reason why Georgia was preseason #1 going into the season. So, got to give credit where it's due, but obviously major disappointment for the Big Orange.
Yeah, man. I mean, not being able to capitalize there on the 4th and 6, that was, just, them punting the football. Boo Carter, Jacoby Thomas was probably, fulfilling that block, and Boo's probably gone for a touchdown. No telling how that, changes the trajectory probably. But I mean, Tennessee, like you said, dude, Carson Beck, I think he had a clean jersey the entire game. And that's something that I did not expect to see after seeing how Ole Miss and their D-line got home to him. And it was just weird to me that, seeing how he struggled under pressure the week before, that Tennessee really didn't bring that much pressure. And when they did, I mean, Georgia knew that we were bringing pressure. Like, they could tell from our defensive fronts that, Tennessee, how they were lining up, what they were going to be doing and how they were going to be attacking it. And when they did get home, or when they did have a chance to get home, I mean, we saw the screenshots of James Pierce and Amari Thomas being like, ring it across the neck. I mean, it just didn't go Tennessee's way. And I'm not going to blame the officiating like a lot of people, but like, even when the breaks didn't go our way, and the breaks were like, Tennessee had an opportunity to, like, it was just, fate was against us, man. And I mean, Dylan Sampson, he showed up, Tennessee showed up, they did their thing. But I mean, yeah, man, Tennessee's defense not being able to get home, not being able to get off the field, and it was just weird, man. The motion from an offense and how it's able to disrupt our defense, and it's been a reoccurring thing over the last few years where they put people in motion. This time it was Georgia's tight ends, and I never would have thought going into this game that Oscar Delp would have like one of the best tight end performances that I've ever seen in my life. But, I mean, that's what happened, Drew. Tennessee got gas for the tight ends. Their safeties and linebackers, kind of got taken advantage of. And I think when Arian Carter had that little injury where he went out for a little bit, like that's where Georgia went on the gas. And, I mean, the blackout night game in Athens, like, it was just everything was kind of stacked up against us, man. And if you don't go out there and take advantage of your opportunities, you're not going to be able to win on the road, especially given our track record on the road in the high post tenure. But I mean, man, we had pyrotechnicals on the field in the third and fourth quarters. Smoke from the fireworks was all caving in. I mean, you had everything, man. You had the 13 men on the field where against NC State, we got a penalty in our favor for that, and then now the 12 men penalty on Jackson Moy running off the field. Like there was a lot of things that Tennessee was used to doing that was different this past Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not gonna sugarcoat or say that the refs didn't play a role, because they most certainly did. I mean, every favorable call that Georgia could have got, it went absolutely towards their way. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, man, it's just this team just couldn't get off the field when it comes on the defensive side of the ball. And I mean, Carson Beck, I think I read the stat the other day on second half, he only had one incompletion the entire time, the entire second half. And I think he was 12 for 13 or 12 for 14, something along those lines in the second half as far as completions go. And he just, ripped us to shreds. And I think the biggest thing that Vol fans and everything have to look into this. We got to look at the bigger picture. I mean, we could talk about the playoff, we could talk about, and so forth, but we got to look at the state of the program. And don't get me wrong, I'm not hitting the panic button or anything like that. The state of the program, this is the best the program's been in easily, the last 20 years by far. But you got to look at the situation. You got to look at the key positions at wide receiver, the offensive line, and linebackers especially. It should not, in year 4 for Tim Banks, and I know that we have a brand new linebackers coach with William Inge, Brian Jean-Marie left for Michigan, or this last offseason, but 4 years in, and you're completely reliant on a transfer who, by the way, didn't even play last year, played about 2 drives, it felt like, against Virginia. You're completely reliant on him for pass coverage and for depth. That's a major red flag to me. And it's not any disrespect towards Arian Carter and Jeremiah Thielander. I think both those guys are great linebackers, and they've made some progress over compared to how they did last year. But man, it's blatantly obvious that Thielander is not that great in pass coverage, and it's pretty obvious too that Arian Carter still has some difficulties and struggles a bit on being in the right spot most of the time when it comes to the pass game. And another thing for me is just, man, the wide receiver group is just so underwhelming. And I think that's the biggest shock for us going into the season, because you thought Brew McCoy's coming back. Brew had some production, in 2022, and 2023 looked so promising until that injury against South Carolina. Brew McCoy hasn't recorded a touchdown yet.
No.
Consider that.
Zero.
That's the thing. We're about to be in our 11th game of the year. Our last home game of the season, hasn't recorded a single touchdown this year. Dante Thornton has been good, but Dante's also been very inconsistent as well, where he's had some games where he's shown out, and he's had others where, because of injuries or whatever, that he hasn't been able to make that impact. And, he looked a little bit like himself from last year, dropping some wide open passes against Georgia. That one that he had, it would have been a 20-yard gain, and it was on a crucial third down too. And you still got Squirrel White over there making the same mistakes, jumping after every single ball, trying to catch it behind him. And it's just those are things that you do when you're a freshman and in early games as a sophomore. You shouldn't be doing that as a junior, and especially coming into your senior year. And you also got to take into consideration, man, of our offensive line. Our offensive line is just not – there was some promise over there during the Alabama game and afterwards where it looked like they were getting improved, but a lot of 5 sacks last Saturday, and you're still reliant on the guys that were there under Pruitt and the transfer portal gets that you had in the last couple off seasons with, Hurd and John Campbell. And so I think my biggest thing is that, and obviously we'll talk about it more into the segment when we talk about the rankings here coming up, but my number one priority would be, if I was Josh Heupel, after this season, you find a new wide receiver coach, you find a new offensive line coach, and you got to find a resolution with the defense coordinator in that linebacker spot. I think William Inge is a fantastic linebackers coach. I think maybe if he gets a proper offseason here, and obviously he's recruited some of those guys, and I know that Edmund Spillman's also been hurt too, and he'll have a big impact next year. But those are the three major spots, man, where it's just like we have to be better than where we are. And if you're better in those spots, then you will beat teams like Georgia and Alabama on a consistent basis. But those three spots right there are effectively holding us back from being a national championship team.
Yeah, I mean, Kelsey Pope was pretty much almost out the door last year going to Georgia until he came back. And I mean, we know the relationship between Josh Heupel and Glenn Ellerbe, and then obviously William Minch coming from Alabama and Washington being a new guy. Tim Banks is another name that, we've also seen kind of, had a flirtation with, mentions for head coaching roles and stuff like that. But that kind of happens when the seasons kind of ramp up. You're seeing coaches elsewhere kind of move around, and the coaching pool and coaching trees you see under successful programs. I mean, sometimes it's not even just getting rid of coaches. Sometimes coaches go and try to take a chance on their career and move on and try to do something like that. And I mean, I'm not throwing that out the window. I'm sure we'll see that involvement with Tennessee in the coming weeks. But it's also hard to just be like, oh, Tennessee has a chance to go 10-2 for 2 out of the last 3 years, and like we're talking about, like we need to make steps. It's something that's yeah, like on paper it's not going to be like not like likable. We've seen the things that have been consistently happening throughout the season, and I don't think that whether we make it to the playoffs or not, that like we don't look back and going to be like, oh, like Tennessee, like Nico Iamaleava is top 10 in quarterbacks that could have more yards off drop passes. Like it's like 230 yards that he's missed in this season from drop balls. Like it's crazy. And I mean, Dylan Sampson's over here, breaking the record books. I mean, yeah, Tennessee could, it could be better off on offense. Like there's a lot of big plays that they left on the field. But when it comes to, the coaching staff, it's also
Vol Nation on the machine.
Yeah, I mean, you completely disconnected from me there in the last 15 seconds of your point. So, but yeah, last I heard was a Vol Nation Twitter machine. So I would agree completely on that one for sure. But I mean, this thing, man. I mean, when I think like the thing that's so frustrating about this team, right, is that this is an elite defensive line, and I would make the argument that this is probably the best defensive line in the country. I would still make that argument even after last Saturday, just because of the course of the season of how dominant they play. And that's why it's like I emphasize tremendously on Heupel. I hope Heupel can be able to take that next step. He's got to put the friendships aside. He's got to put aside all the stuff of these guys that he's been working with for years and years and years. And you got to look at the bigger picture, man. Because Texas is only going to get better. Alabama's only going to get better under Kalen DeBoer. And Kirby Smart just keeps that big oil machine, just keeps on just freaking just grinding, just year in, year out with top-tier prospects. And, I mean, it's just, I don't know. Like, we're still going to be 10-2, which is a hilarious thing because, like, 4 or 5 years ago, we have been dying for, like, consistency of winning 10 games every year. But it's just more frustrating because we're so close. We're so damn close from being that top-tier college football teams. And you can see it's blatantly obvious that we're not getting better at the offensive line. We're not getting better at wide receiver. I mean, hell, Miles Kitselman is probably our best wide receiver this year. I mean, honestly. I mean, even, more of a Dante, more of a Brazil, more of a Squirrel, and Brew. I mean, he's been the most consistent over the last 4 or 5 games for us. And, it's one thing if you have, like, a generational talent like Brock Bowers where you're like, okay, I mean, this guy's a first-tier, first-round all-pro tight end. I totally get that. Like, he's going to be an absolute monster in college. But, man, I mean, Kitselman's a good tight end, but there is way more high school talent that we have on our roster from the wide receiver position that should be producing more. You know what I mean? And so, I don't know, man. It's exhausting.
I think, yeah. And I also think that, I mean, there's Tennessee's obviously got a red shirt plan where they're not trying to, just go out and like throw all these guys out there and like keep, like there's obviously like some kind of, plan, like 3-year plan of getting these guys into the system and eventually plan to like keep it a 3 to 5 year thing, like getting these players developed the right way or whatever. But I mean, I totally agree. Miles Kitselman, that little, fullback dive, very Princeton fan-esque, kind of got me hype. And I mean, like we said, man, 10-2, like it's kind of like, well, it's where we wanted to be, Drew. Like it's where we wanted to be before the season. But I think that Arkansas loss in Fayette, man, to the 19-14, no second half points. You know, the offensive line being like abused by Luke Jackson. I mean, I can still see it in my vision like right now, and like we're going into the UTEP where Tennessee needs probably 70 points to probably impress the committee, because Tennessee can finish 10-2, but I think the next 2 weeks is like more on style points and doing it in a dominant fashion, because I mean it's kind of like what we wanted the SEC to be this powerhouse in college football. The East and the West is gone, but there's like it's obviously turned into our worst nightmare as well. And I mean, it's where we wanted to be. 10-2 is, we thought would be a sure-in for the college football playoff, but it's obviously not. And there's, 5 or 6 games that Tennessee's going to need some help in these next few weeks. But, man, I mean, like the trajectory of this program, no doubt in my mind, like Tennessee is still on an upward trajectory, but there's going to be some looking in the mirror. I think it's the best way to say it. And, putting your program over friendships and doing what's best and where people need to go or where people need to be, that's going to happen. But I think right now, man, Tennessee in the locker room is probably more locked in the fan base of those last 2 weeks. And those guys, before this season, the goals they had, and we saw all the videos and snippets, man, they know they're on the outside looking in now. Like the everywhere they look on the media, it's Tennessee. I mean, the only people that's trying to put Tennessee's path out there is Vol Nation. Like everyone's trying to discredit Tennessee and their strength of schedule and their resume. I mean, these guys got to go out there and prove it, man. So I think the locker room being locked in and not focusing on the future and focusing on the now. I mean, it's still a big week this week, and it's a perfect time for those guys to start off early at noon this Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, we'll immediately start talking over towards college football rankings in this committee and their decision making. But I mean, that's the situation that we're in. We no longer control our own destiny. We got to hope that we have a couple upsets here, either this weekend or next weekend. And the main goal for Tennessee is not just to win. It's like we got to win decisively. Like we got to cover 42.5 against UTEP on Saturday, and we're going to have to beat the hell out of Vanderbilt. I mean, especially considering apparently Vanderbilt's a better loss in some cases than Arkansas is for whatever reason.
Arkansas is a good win, but a bad loss.
So really, I mean, it's very Tennessee, but I mean, that's the thing. I guess we might as well. I mean, we already talked about the Georgia game for the last 18 minutes, so I guess we might as well just deep dive into the college football rankings.
I mean, yeah. So Tennessee, obviously number 11 this week. I think I was expecting the 11 or 12 range, kind of where Georgia was last week, but 11 ultimately with how the seeding works out in the conference championships. Tennessee is the first team out. Georgia does bump up. Alabama it's a crazy bump, which that's probably the one that's my biggest head scratcher, Drew. We'll get into that too. Texas is up there. Teams, Tennessee, probably that team on the outside looking in, Tennessee watching that Indiana, Ohio State game this week, Notre Dame and Army, some big games that could go Tennessee's way, but they're going to need some help, Drew. And I mean, you look on the outside and, you look at Penn State, you look at Indiana, you look at teams like that. And I mean, if they drop a game as well, Tennessee's going to be, having a way to compare their resume to other resumes. But I mean, it's kind of where I expected to be, but it's not like the biggest FU from the committee that they could have done.
Yeah, I mean, I would say 11 is probably what I would expect. I would have expected us to drop a few spots. I guess, my thing is, though, and this is the one thing I just don't understand, and I try to understand the logic from, what's his name, Wade Manuel, the head of the committee for the college football playoff and current Michigan athletic director. What I don't understand, though, is that Georgia was at 12 last weekend, and they beat the number 6 team, and they beat us pretty well. I mean, it was a close game, but they covered, They only go up 2 spots while Alabama played Mercer, and Bama went up 3. And this is where it even gets even more ridiculous, right?
Bama bias.
Notre Dame is number 6 in the country at 9-1, and I will give credit. I'll give credit where it's due. They do have a win on the road against Texas A&M. A&M looks like, ironically, will be playing for the SEC championship or playing for a spot.
in year one of Elko.
And they did beat Louisville, who is they were subpar. They were a top 25 team for the most of the year.
But
they lost to Northern Illinois at home as a 28.5-point favorite, the same Northern Illinois team that is 7th in the MAC. Not the country, the MAC.
The MAC.
And I don't even think they have a winning record right now. You could fact check on that. I'm not too entirely sure on it. And then you go over to Penn State at 9-1, who doesn't even have a top 25 win. Or if you're going to be like Joel Klatt over there at Fox Sports, trying to argue that Illinois is a quality win. So that's the only quote-unquote top 25 win that they have. And Illinois, I believe, is either 6-4 or 5-5. I know they're on that fringe of bowl eligibility. And then after that, you got Texas, who's – a lot of people are saying that, Vanderbilt's probably their best win or Arkansas is their best win. If you're basing it off the FPI rankings, Colorado State's actually their best win over Vanderbilt and Arkansas. But going from the committee, though, that's a notable win, though. And this is what I don't get, though. SMU, for example, who's also 9-1, has a top 15 win, has been really beating the hell out of
really, really good.
ACC in their very first year.
Is crazy.
Playing very good football. They're in 13. They're behind Boise State. They're not even expected in. And then you got Miami, who doesn't even have – again, I think they don't even have a top 25 win. And they lost to Georgia Tech as a 14-point
They lost to Georgia Tech.
So my whole entire thing is that Texas plays Texas A&M next weekend. Penn State plays Minnesota at Minnesota on Saturday.
Row the boat, baby. Row the boat.
Ole Miss plays Florida in the Swamp on Saturday as well. If Texas loses to A&M next weekend, are they out? And I can already tell you that answer.
Yes.
But no, they're not. They're not going to be out.
But if they lose twice.
Doesn't matter. Their 2 losses would be Georgia and A&M. Those are better losses than what anybody else has. If they're just calling a spade, they're 2 top 15 losses. At least going by the committee's logic here, right? Because they're not going head to head, right? Because you've had columnists and even the committee themselves says that we don't really necessarily look head to head early in the season. It's more of a recency bias and who we see is having the most improvement. And giving myself a thumbs up because myself agrees on my own take. And so Mercer, Alabama beating Mercer by 45 and Alabama beating LSU in Death Valley by 30 apparently is a bigger win or looks more impressive than Tennessee beating Alabama. How they come to that conclusion is beyond me. I don't even understand their logic, and I don't even think they know what their own criteria is as well. But this is based off of what they've been telling us.
If they're going off recency, though, as well, like they're talking about, Bama, we're really impressed with, how they handled Mercer. Like, I think in that last week, if they're dropping that second game to A&M and Tennessee's, put up however many points, and you got SMU, who's probably like one of the most explosive offenses that I've enjoyed watching in the ACC. Like they're elite, man. If we're talking about an SMU team that, just because of their first year in the conference, they're going to be left out. Like that team, deserves to be, and they have a legit argument as well. Dude, like I just don't know. Like, you thought it would be simpler in this 12-team format. It's obviously not because you're approaching this seeding thing. And a lot of people say, oh, hell, just rip the Band-Aid off and put the 12 best teams in there. But then, you'd have like 7 SEC teams, and everyone would bitch and complain then. And I like the format. Don't get me wrong. I think you should be rewarded for you winning a championship. But I also don't think that some of these conference championships, like championship winners, should also be getting a first round bye. Like there's a lot that's going to be fixed in the years to come. But I think going back to the point, like I just like if Texas drops that game to A&M, that they're going to be out of the SEC championship, right? Because they would put A&M in there against Georgia or Bama.
So I'm looking at the current rankings right now. So you got Texas and Texas A&M both tied for first place at 5-1. Georgia finished the year off 6-2, and then you also got Alabama, who's also 4-2, because Alabama's got to play. I believe Oklahoma on Saturday and Auburn next weekend as well. So if Texas loses or A&M loses, the winner of that game will be in the SEC championship. But
The loser would essentially
believe
be the loser would essentially be in the same boat as Tennessee going 10-2, but also sitting out the SEC championship. But then would it go back? Like, would the committee be deciding off of recency bias of Tennessee finishing the season 2-0 in dominant fashion, or Texas coming off a loss and they're being, oh, we lost to A&M and Georgia or something like that? Like, that's what I you know.
That's the thing is, like, there's a lack of explanation on their thought process and their criteria, right? I mean, you have been saying that, like, we're going off recency bias and we don't really care about head-to-head, right? Like, that is something that the committee has emphasized, and also college football pundits who've also been around the committee too. But then I would also ask the same question, though. Like, if head-to-head does not matter and it's more about the quality of wins and how you've played the last 5-6 weeks, then why is Ole Miss ahead of Georgia?
Ole Miss has a loss at home to Kentucky. Tennessee has a loss against Arkansas on the road in a night game.
Tennessee's worst loss, who's Arkansas, is going to be on Saturday. They play Louisiana Tech. They're going to be bowl eligible. Kentucky's going to probably finish the year 4-8 because they got to play Texas this weekend and they got to play Louisville the weekend after that. And you're trying to, and this is what I don't understand. And this is the thing, like, you're trying to tell me, you're seriously trying to tell me that losing to 4-8 Kentucky at home, as a 17.5-point favorite at home, mind you,
yeah,
is not as bad than losing to Arkansas on the road. And, like, and don't get me wrong, this Arkansas team is not a good team. This was a bad loss for Tennessee, and I understand the fact that we were up 14-3 going into the fourth quarter. It was inexcusable. I mean, it was an inexcusable loss. But however, if we're going to go base it on this by each team and their criteria, there's no way that you can argue that Kentucky is less of a worse loss than Arkansas.
I think what 6 of our SEC opponents are bowl eligible and have a better than 500 record. Like, I mean, Tennessee, like, if you look at the strength of schedule, if we're not just talking quality wins or talking head-to-heads, I mean, look at the strength of schedule. I know it's probably one of our least, like, strong schedules of, like, in recent history, but I mean, you know, like, that, if we're going to be talking about Vietnam when it all comes down to it, man, like, I mean, that Arkansas is not, like you said, they're gonna be bowl eligible. You have to look at it, man. Like, I just don't see how Tennessee's resume, when it comes down to it, like, how, if you're judging a team how they finish compared to when they played them, like, if that's eventually going to be a bowl eligible team, like, that's not a bad L. And then you're going to reward Texas for that being a good recent win. It's just, it makes no sense.
And that's the thing too. The only way where I could see Tennessee making the playoff, right, and then even boosting their ranking after that, Ole Miss has to lose to Florida, right? Ole Miss loses to Florida. Florida goes 6-5, and they're going to get a guaranteed win against Florida State next weekend for sure. That puts them 7-5. That's a 7-win Florida team, which a lot of people thought probably would win 4 games going into the year, right?
I thought they were going 2-10.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was rather pessimistic from you, Brando. I think you and I both know that team has too much talent to go 2-10, honestly. But you know, I mean, like, and that's the thing. So with us beating Florida at home, would that not be considered a decent win, like, at least in the committee's eye? Because I'm failing to understand, like, what's even the argument for Indiana besides the fact that they're undefeated. And if you're going to use the argument that they're undefeated, then why the hell isn't Army in the top 10?
Dude, Army's getting hoed if we're talking about it. If we're being honest, they're getting hoed.
Army hasn't beaten anybody, and that's the thing. Well, Army's just like Indiana; they haven't beaten anybody. They both benefited off of a very, very weak schedule.
When I saw Indiana's out of conference wins and they're, like, against 3-7, 3-7, 4-8, like Mountain West teams, I'm like, dude, this is, like, it's just it's mind blowing to me. And I think even if they keep it close, that the committee might just be like, oh, even though they're not one of the best teams, like, oh, they deserve it after a special season. And we saw that with TCU in the past. There's, like, sometimes that leniency of a deserving factor. I mean, we need Ohio State to boat race them. And I think it's criminal that Florida's playing their best football. Lane Kiffin's complaining about not having night games. And this is a 12 p.m. noon kickoff in the Swamp, man. Like, thank God that DJ Lagaway is healthy. He's playing his best football. And, yeah, this Florida team is probably a fringe top 25 team under DJ Lagaway. And I think if they're thinking about Florida being that high, I think that goes back to Tennessee's win over Florida. I mean, even though it wasn't overtime, that second half was mostly, a DJ lag away Florida team. Tennessee came back and held them off, ended up winning that football game. I mean, it hasn't been sunshine and rainbows. Tennessee hasn't blown out SEC competition, but if they can go out this week against UTEP and put up Chattanooga and Kent State numbers like they did earlier in this year, and drop a 50 burger like we saw against NC State, Chat, and Kent State, I mean, Tennessee has a chance to impress the committee with style points, and this UTEP team it's really fucking bad, Drew. They just went to double overtime with 1-9. 1-9 Kennesaw State double overtime, and they got their second win on the season. So yeah, UTEP's coming in, 2-8 with the former Austin Peay head coach, and I'm sure they'll be like all scrappy. Josh Heupel probably wants to put up a 50 burger off that alone. So I mean, you got to go out there and put style points. But I can't believe that I have to root for Florida. It's just going to be disgusting because, I mean, it's just, I mean, in good spirit, it's against Lane Kiffin. Like, that's cool. I'm cool with that. But Billy Napier grew up a Tennessee Vol fan in Cookeville, man. So, I mean, if he could do us a solid, that'd be really well. And heaven forbid, man, maybe, just maybe. Actually, I'm not even going to say it, like Kentucky beating Texas, but that's not happening. So,
well, but this is the weird thing about this Kentucky team is that they have played much better on the road this year than they have at home for whatever reason. I don't understand why, but I mean, you look at the Ole Miss win, right? Going in there against a top 5 Ole Miss team, getting a W off there. Against us, I mean, they gave us a scare. I mean, it was a one-score game going into the fourth quarter, and
I'm a little nervous.
And that's the thing. I mean, they play solid against top 25 competition on the road. I don't think they're going to beat Texas, but I mean, again, you never know. I mean, we didn't think Vanderbilt was going to beat Alabama this year either, and so you really never know. But I mean, my thing is, man, is that when you look at Indiana's schedule, for example, they have played one team that has a winning record currently, and that's Washington at 6-5, and then you got maybe the second.
Jackson.
That's the second best team that they played is 5-5 and 2-5 in conference play, Nebraska, and every other team that they played after that is not bowl eligible, or they're under 500, or they're an FCS opponent. And so I just I don't know, man. They have the easiest schedule I think I've ever seen for a football team. And ironically, they were supposed to play Louisville earlier this year, but they bought them out to play Western Illinois for whatever reason. Wonder why they came up with that. And so, I honestly, I don't even know even if they get blown out by Ohio State, if it'll even matter, right? Just like how I don't even know if Penn State loses at Minnesota, if it's going to matter where they're going to be outside the top 10. Because nothing. I mean, there's no criteria. I mean, there's nothing that the committee has said, this is an inexcusable loss. This is what we're looking at strength of schedule. Because if you're looking at strength of schedule, Tennessee would probably be like number 6 or number 7 right now, right?
Right.
Because Notre Dame has, I think, the 82nd best schedule. Indiana is like 108th. And I mean, Penn State's like in the mid 40s or like high 50s. And so there's no criteria, there's no explanation. And I continue to expect chaos, and I don't know, just based on like how the committee has been all year long, I just do not see Tennessee. Tennessee has to have more than just winning out in solid fashion too.
Yeah, I mean, I saw like one on the committee posted that little graphic that if Tennessee wins out, like they have like an 88% chance of winning, but that's probably with like factors in there of like things like going in our way as well. And I mean, yeah, like you have to, count on these games. And like, that's what I'm really worried about. The Big 12, how it is really the most unexciting football sometimes if it's not in the top of like, talking about an Oregon team of Dylan Gabriel, or like a flashy offense. I'm worried that, the Penn State and the Minnesota game might be so close, or that the Ohio State Indiana game might be so close that like those teams don't drop, like you're saying, that the committee is like favorable. Like the Big Ten bias we've seen in the college football playoff rankings so far, it's scary, because I feel like they're like automatically like they're deserving of a bid, just how they see the SEC. Like the two powerhouse conferences or whatever. And I'm really worried that these, like, Ohio State and obviously Penn State aren't playing for a blowout win. They're going out there playing for a win to, survive in the season, get into the college football playoffs, win their conference, and, just survive and advance. It's postseason time in college football. And I mean, I'm worried about how this committee is going to look and judge these each resume, and then how they've just disregarded Tennessee. I'm kind of agreeing with you. One of these games has to drop, because Tennessee, they can go out there and win, by 70 or by 40 against Vanderbilt, and it not be enough. I mean, we saw it in 2022 when we thought, hey, 10-2 gets you into the 12-team playoff. We're still sweating our balls. Like, we're still sweating.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just the reality of, the situation that we're in right now. And, there was always this big fear that there would just be a bunch of just 9-1 and 8-2 and 10-2 teams that would be all bunched up in the last couple weeks of the regular season.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, and it's insane. But I mean, it's just, I still try to understand, what exactly is this criteria they're going to follow through. And that's the thing. I think with a close loss to Minnesota for Penn State on Saturday, I don't think they drop outside the top 10. Really the only possible scenario that I look at for Tennessee is that Florida's going to have to beat Ole Miss. Or somehow, miraculously, if that doesn't happen, Mississippi State somehow beats Ole Miss, and that's not going to happen either. So,
no.
And it's just, I don't know. It's a mess. It's extremely unfortunate that this is probably probably the best defense that we've had in the last 25 years. And odds are that we're probably not even going to make the playoff and have an opportunity to show for it. But, that's just – Tennessee's got to play better on the road, man. I mean, it's just – you got to win the games where you beat Arkansas. And, the crazy thing is, too, and I think, the more insane thing is that I think if Tennessee, if they had lost to Alabama instead of Arkansas, we would probably be a fill-in to the playoff. I think we would be a guarantee to the playoff, because the committee would be like, well, hey, they lost to Alabama, they lost to Georgia. Those are two really good teams. But for whatever reason, it's just because of the fact that this game was, 6 weeks ago, and we lost to an Arkansas team that gave Texas fits, mind you, that should have beaten Texas last weekend too. It's going to kill us. It's going to be the thing that holds us back from making the college football playoff. But I'll be completely honest with you too. Even if we make the college football playoff and we get a road appearance, whether if it's Happy Valley over at Penn State or whomever, I don't see us winning. Josh Heupel's also got to prove to me that he could actually win a big time road game before I can have that confidence and have that expectation that we would win.
Yeah, it would not be in our favor to have to go on the road, and that's obviously what we've all known to come. It still has not happened yet, and the one that's not even. It was way back. I can't think of one since Pitt, in Pitt year 2 or whatever. So, just thinking about it, this is going to need some help. I think that Ole Miss has to drop one, or maybe Indiana getting smashed. Just one of the scenarios, man, just to help Tennessee, maybe. I think it just takes one, but I think if Ole Miss wins out, and Tennessee wins out 10-2, and you go back to Tennessee dropping that game to Arkansas, and Ole Miss blowing Arkansas out in dominant fashion. It wasn't even close.
Yeah.
I think it does, head to head doesn't matter. We saw that Tennessee beating Alabama doesn't matter. That Tennessee beating Florida doesn't matter. And I think I agree with you. If Tennessee would have dropped that Alabama game before the season, we said 10-2 was losses to Georgia, and Bama gets you in the playoff. And you might just, it's going to be a really tough Kalen DeBoer team. We knock off Alabama, and we knew that night against Arkansas. We were all talking about it, man. Tennessee could go out here, and we all didn't think that we kind of probably thought that 9-3 was the expectation. Then Tennessee does have the chance to go 10-2. Favorable noon matchup in Nashville, I think, against Vanderbilt. That's pretty favorable. Mm-hmm. And there's still a chance that Tennessee doesn't get into the college football playoff at 10-2. It's crazy to see, man. And it's before this Georgia game, Tennessee was the number one defense in the country. They're still the number one rush defense in the country. But I think that has to go to show for something. Just off the resume, the strength of schedule, statistically where Tennessee is. This is probably one of the better Tennessee teams in quite some time. And if they don't make the playoffs, it's 10-2 in my mind will never be a disappointment season. But this team is a postseason. It's a postseason football team, man. It should be a postseason football team.
you can't ever say beating Florida and Alabama in the same season is a disappointment. But at the same time, though, not making the playoff in a 12-team playoff especially would be pretty disappointing in itself. And my whole entire thing is that I don't understand why the committee refuses to take the fact that we've only had one team that scored over 20 points against us, which was Georgia last weekend. And the defense has been completely dominant week in, week out, outside of that, and arguably outside the Arkansas game. But really, Arkansas only scored like 13 points because we gave them a gimme touchdown at the very end.
Yeah.
But it seems like defense doesn't matter. It seems like the only thing in this committee, at least according to their top 10, is about teams that can score offense, that can score points. But then again, it's like then you go back to the argument, like, why is this SMU not in there? Why is Army not in there? And why is not Boise State higher than they are? Because those are all teams that can score and score very high, and so
Ashton Gentry is a Heisman finalist and he's probably not going to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, they'll make the playoffs. They'll finish 11-1. I think, honestly, I would even see the argument that even if Army beats Notre Dame and finishes undefeated, I still think they probably wind up choosing Boise State because of Ashton Gentry and also taking the fact of like how close
they played
Oregon. They should have beaten Oregon too, and Oregon's undefeated this year. So
yeah, that was close.
It's a fiery hot mess. It's a steaming pile of dog turd. That's to describe these college football rankings, and I don't think it's going to get any better. And I think our fan base is going to be even more frustrated when the new rankings come out next week after all the results on Saturday, if we don't get anything towards our favor. So,
I just expect it. I'm going to tell you next week, if we blow out and when we blow out UTEP, Tennessee, there's no way to really break down this game other than Tennessee has to go out there and just score points, like shove it down their throat and not let up. I wouldn't be surprised if Nico's, not out of the game until like the fourth quarter. You got to go out there and just shove it.
This is again, yeah. But you can't even. That's the thing.
But I'm saying, I was gonna say is like don't expect when we turn to next Tuesday that Tennessee's gonna benefit off their like 50-point win against UTEP that Alabama was off Mercer, and just watch that. Just look out for that because we're not gonna go no 3 spots next week.
Yeah, if we do beat UTEP 69-0, we should absolutely go up, several spots, but that's absolutely not going to happen. So you just got to prepare for the worst, and that's the thing. It's just
I'm really interested to. Oh, wait, no, go ahead.
No. Do you got any updates?
No, not yet. I was literally talking about. I'm really interested to see the availability report for Tennessee and UTEP, but there is no availability report because it's only for SEC football games. So.
Yeah, that's right. So. Well, this is the thing, too, is that typically if this was a normal year of college football, you would probably have Nico sit out at halftime, allow Gaston Moore to, take in, because he's a senior, right? Taking the senior day celebrations and all that stuff. But in this situation, you got to have Nico play all 4 quarters. They're not going to allow D-Sam to play all 4 quarters, but you got to let Nico and the ones, for the most part, play all 4 quarters, all 60 minutes, and just – yeah, it sounds, cynical or whatever, but just rack up as many points and just beat the living hell out of UTEP because apparently margin of victory now is the only thing that really matters more than anything else. So
that's what I was interested to see on the injury report is, if Deshaun Bishop was still on there, if we had any update on him. But there's still nothing there. And Dylan Sampson's getting like 20, 30 carries a game. I was actually sad that he only got 19 carries against Georgia, if I'm being completely honest. I feel like he probably should have got more, but Tennessee didn't put themselves in a situation because of like we didn't have nearly as many penalties as I thought we would have in a nuclear like mindset. But even the ones that we did have, they were pretty damaging to the offense and how they went. And not having Deshaun Bishop out there, Dylan Sampson probably should have had more go, but it is what it is. There was a lot of crazy shit going on, man. You have, all that college football. Tennessee drops that game same night or the night before that. There was some chaos in the world, Drew. We had Mike Tyson out here boxing. We had John Jones back in the octagon. Like there was some decency. I have Peyton Manning on my TV right now in the Country Music Awards. Like it's,
CMAs are absolute garbage now. It's absolute garbage TV. And also that Mike Tyson fight last Friday was the biggest joke I've ever seen in my entire life. It was
it's kinda
rather
sad.
pathetic. It was like trying to it's like watching one of your heroes just fall from grace. Now, don't get me wrong, Mike Tyson was not a hero of mine by any stretch of the imagination, but anybody with a brain that actually thought 58-year-old Mike Tyson actually had a shot in that fight is just completely fooling themselves. Not to mention the whole entire thing was rigged to begin with. I mean, he was making $20 million. He was going to make $20 million to make sure it goes through all 8 rounds. Why would he not intentionally rig that? I mean, just use your brain, people. But yeah, it's cool seeing John Jones get back in the octagon. We got what, another 10 minutes left or so.
I mean, go ahead. I was gonna give a shout out before. I want to hop into some basketball, but probably the Lady Vols, Kim Caldwell or Kim Hundo. I call her. Everyone's calling her Kimmy Hundo out here recruiting. Man, the recruitment machine has gone burr. 3 top 25 recruits, 3 5-stars. I meim, Kimmy's just been going absolutely crazy. Getting back a huge 5-star in-state that Tennessee lost when Kelly Harper departed. Kim Caldwell was able to get that one back in the boat, and she's just been going crazy, man. That recruitment weekend for I think it was Kentucky or Bama, where they had the Lambos out and the full party in TBA. Man, what a huge late close where a lot of programs are using the portal. Kim Caldwell invested in the future. That's 3 huge high school recruit pickups. So I mean, pretty excited to see what she's going to do recruiting wise, but also on the court, man. It hasn't been a single game besides I think MTSU where they didn't score 100.
Yeah, no, man. That was like one of the things that Kim Caldwell emphasized during her press conference. When she was hired for this role, was that this was going to be, and you've noticed it too, especially with just Danny White hires in general. Coaches and teams that are able to score a lot of points are able to play an exciting brand of basketball and love being aggressive offensively. And that's exactly what our teams are. I mean, they scored 101 against Samford to start off the year, then followed up with 90 against UT Martin, 89 against MTSU, and they scored 109 against Liberty last weekend. Did give up 93, which is a little concerning, but her team to score. I mean, they're much more entertaining to watch, and it's going to take her a couple of years to really get the Lady Vols basketball program back to where it really fully deserves. But man, I'll tell you what, though. I mean, this is it's getting people back. Food City Center at Thompson Bowling Arena to watch Lady Vols basketball and getting people in the seats and be invested again. And we haven't had that for a very, very long time since Pat Summitt. And not to mention, I think Kim Caldwell is the first Tennessee head coach to have multiple 5-stars in a recruiting class since Pat Summitt back in 2008. So she has done an incredible job in such a short amount of time. And they got a couple good games coming up. I mean, they do play Florida State, an ACC team. That's probably going to be a bubble team for the tournament this year. And they also play Iowa, who obviously without Caden Clark, not the same Iowa team, but, another big brand. And then, they go up with, play Memphis on the road, Tulsa, Winthrop, and then they'll start off playing A&M, and then Oklahoma, who's a top 10 team as well, to start off conference play. And I'll have to double check too, but yeah, they also play UConn as well, which is going to be a big game for them especially. So there's a lot of good opportunities for them. A lot, the recruiting.
Talasia Cooper, man, dropping 33 against Liberty was just crazy. I didn't get to see that game. And MTSU and Liberty, man, those are 2 teams that I think are going to be able to win close to 25 games this season. Those are really good women's basketball programs on the rise for sure. But I mean, Kim Caldwell, what she's been able to do, the recruiting, it's all pointing. I mean, she's doing it obviously in a hard time personally too. I mean, I can't imagine doing all that with going through the woman thing she's also going through, and then obviously the adjustment with her husband as well, being on the men's staff. I mean, it's definitely not easy. It could probably be really high stressful as everything else they got going on in the new home. So
I mean, we saw with the last coaching staff what happens when you have your partner on the same coaching staff as yourself. So not really the best of decisions by any stretch of the imagination from the previous regime. And good on Kim Caldwell as well on getting that situated. And women's things, I mean, you could just call it as it is, Brando. She's pregnant.
Yeah, she's pregnant. Hey, at least, I mean, I know that Kim Caldwell is pregnant, but at least I didn't be like, oh, Kelly Harper, congrats on being pregnant at 2 months ago. I mean, that wasn't me. That was
Who cares? Who cares? I mean,
but anyways, I mean, yeah, Tennessee, obviously a lot of people have shifted to basketball. And I think, the excitement around the Lady Vols, man, it's different because, I mean, you actually the energy, you can kind of feel it. And I'm kind of getting that sense of like how I was like a few years ago, like under Tony Vitello in the baseballs, or how it was like, when Josh Heupel, like year 2, like against Pitt, like when things like you kind of started getting a glimpse of what it could be. And I mean, if you can see all these things kind of get put together, I think the staff is like a lot of guys, like they kind of surround Kim, a lot of young up and comers that are, growing with the game and this staff. And I think they're recruiting really well as well. The Lady Vols, man, they have a chance to, get back to where they want to be. And I think a lot of people, you've been seeing, I don't know if you saw, but there's been some pictures of people in TBA, like more and more people coming to the games, which is obviously a good sign as well. Yeah, I mean, SEC Network game this week against Western Carolina, but they're 4-2. It's a decent Western Carolina team, another test. But yeah, I'm excited to see what it is in conference play and how this thing does kind of get started because giving up 93 to Liberty, man. I mean, I think you don't have to worry about Tennessee outscoring people offensively with the pace of play, but you don't want to give up 90 points if you don't have to, especially against Liberty.
Yeah. I mean, and that was probably the worst defensive performance they've had so far. And compared to all the other opponents that they've played, I think it was like MTSU and Sanford and UT Martin. They've looked fine for the most part defensively. But, I mean, decent win. You got a couple big ones coming up. And then obviously you got the conference play where, you always got to play really tough opponents with Oklahoma and Texas now, but also, traditionally LSU and South Carolina and Mississippi State. So a lot of good competition for them, a lot of exciting matchups. We got, a few minutes left here on the show. We'll transition from women's basketball to the basketballs and Rick Barnes. I mean, we got a big game tomorrow night against Virginia. Vols are already 4-0. Really impressive win against Louisville a couple weeks ago, and won in dominant fashion both against Montana and Austin Peay on Sunday. I was at the Austin Peay game last Sunday, or this past Sunday, and I gotta say, I mean, not talking too much about Tennessee basketball, but when it comes to Austin Peay, though, it was very cool to see that. I forgot his name.
The Wandy guy,
the one-armed guy. That guy is a fucking dog. I mean, absolute dog, and he was quick, man. I mean, you talk about he had a couple steals. He had a couple steals. A couple slams. Had 3-pointer as well. He's a pretty good basketball player. I mean, he really is. So,
yeah, he was on the OT7, like all those highlight clips, overtime, and all that stuff growing up. And seeing him actually do it in college basketball is crazy, man.
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's not just inspirational, but it's awesome to see that it's not like an inspiration piece, you know what I mean? But obviously, he absolutely deserves to be on the court, and he's definitely made earned the scholarship to be able to play at Austin Peay. But, man, I mean, that Austin Peay team is not bad. I will give credit where it's due. They got a couple guards that can be able to shoot the three-point ball, and they got a post player that's aggressive as hell. I mean, he was just fouling the shit out of Alcara and Milicic all game. But, man, this Tennessee basketball team, I got to tell you, dude, this team's good. This team's really, really good.
When Tennessee finally got going offensively, man, he was just crazy because Zakai was out there going full jelly highlight reel, the step backs crossing over, giving guys maps. But then when you see 6'10" Igor Milicic having his breakout game, I mean, it was just you finally saw the beauty of Igor in the Rick Barnes system, man. It is just absolutely crazy. You don't expect that guy to be 6'10", just like how Mayshek was saying, you look over and you're wondering how he's having this success, dude. This guy is able to do this kind of shooting and this kind of athletic ability at that height, at that body, bro. And I get his father, bro. His father is a well-known NBA player, and it runs in the family and the DNA. But just that the added ability that it has in Tennessee and how Igor kind of transitions from replenishing of stepping into for what Tennessee lost last year. I think it's a huge upgrade, and just getting going now. I mean, this is going to be a guy that can. I think he's only going to get hotter, Drew. He's filthy.
Oh, I mean, he went 11 for 14 from the field on Sunday for 23 points. And I mean, and not just him. Let's get credit where it's due for the entire Tennessee team on that performance on Sunday. I mean, they shot close to 70% from the field in the first half. And it's 63% for the entire game. I mean, 103 points, 52 points in the first half, and respectively didn't let the foot off the gas with 51 the second half. That's the thing about this team, man. And I think a lot of people that don't really know too much about the guys that we got in this portal kind of thought, okay, this is a team that's losing Owaka and Adu. These are guys that had valuable minutes that were starters. And, losing, Triple J and Santee and DK. I mean, when you look at that, you're like, oh my gosh, those are 4 of the 5 starters Tennessee's losing. How is Tennessee going to be able to recover? But, man, give credit where it's due, though. Rick Barnes has done a tremendous job on reshaping this roster. And I think in a way, this team is actually from top to bottom in a much better position and has way more depth in scoring options than they did a year ago. I mean, you're talking about Igor Milicic, right? Absolute dog at 6'10" that can be able to stretch the court, can play as a 2, can play as a 4. He can even play as a center. I mean, he's close to 7 foot. Okpara, an elite defender. I mean, averaging 2 blocks a game. And, he's continued to develop that offensive side of the ball from him. If he averages 8 points a game, we're golden. And you got Chaz Lanier, who's kind of like DK in the sense where it's like once he hits a 3-pointer, he just gets going. And I think the most encouraging sign for me on watching that game on Sunday, and granted fact, it's Austin Peay. I mean, Austin Peay is a mid-major program who will probably win their conference, but not the tier that Tennessee's in by any stretch of the imagination. But they did a good job defensively, Austin Peay did, on shutting down Chaz Lanier. And even their head coach was like, our whole entire focus was on stopping Lanier based off what we watched in the last couple of games. And guess what? I mean, look what happened. We just had more guys that had other options. I mean, Gainey played well. Zakai's been playing at a high level. Zakai's leading the team in points at about 15 and a half a game. I don't think that's going to last
Cade
too
Phillips
much
had
longer.
12 points.
Cade Phillips played well too. And, obviously Igor played well. And even Cameron Carr, who is developing into a really good player, he's showing a lot of promise too. I mean, and that's the thing about this team, dude. And not to mention, my Meshack. Meshack is Mr.
Still a lockdown dog.
Lockdown dog, Mr. Consistent 6 points a game, and so Tennessee has a lot of options when it comes to, and they really collectively probably have about 11 or 12 guys that could be able to generate points and score. And that was kind of the thing that was missing with this team last year was that Adu, no disrespect, but Mr. Inconsistent as it gets. He was like Kamwa on steroids in the sense of like only showing up in the smaller games and didn't really fare well against teams that had strong post play. You had Santee, who for his career was a very good player for Tennessee, but last year was just completely non-existent altogether. And then Triple J was also an extremely inconsistent player on the offensive side of the ball too. And so the team was still heavily reliant on DK, which, by the way, shout out to DK.
Dude,
absolutely
crazy. I stayed up watching that last night.
Absolute balling. But, man, this team is in a really good spot, and obviously they play a very decent Virginia team tomorrow night, and then they'll play the winner of St. John's or Baylor, who are both top 25 teams. A really good test for this team going in, Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving weekend, and then obviously we'll follow up with the start of December facing Syracuse.
Yeah, man. So pretty much, I mean, I pretty much just agree with you. This team is, I think everyone kind of last year and this year, they kind of like, we're looking at like how teams kind of, mesh together compared to, previous, what last year's team was and what this year's team was, and they were doing about position and stuff. But literally this team as a whole and how they're playing as a whole to begin with, I mean, I think they're meshing really well, and the chemistry is only going to get better. What I'm kind of worried about is like the last few practices, Tennessee has kind of been banged up. There's only, 8 guys on the roster, 8 scholarship players out there practicing. Yeah. So I'm hoping that, tomorrow night, 9:30 Eastern tip off, that we kind of, see Tennessee out there healthy, go out there and compete. But we're playing against a Virginia team that's kind of been, it's a weird Virginia team. It's a good team, good competition, a good test. But their coach, Tony Bennett, retiring kind of shocked the world. That was a weird one with that. And I mean, kind of just looking out, who knows, man? I mean, it's a decent competition.
Tennessee's 11.5-point favorites tomorrow against the Cavaliers. Virginia is 3-0. And they do have a little solid guard under McNeely, who's averaging about 16 points, shooting 64% from the field. But, I mean, this is very typical Virginia basketball where they love to play defense. They love to control the tempo, slow down the clock, slow down the play, and try to make you play their style of basketball. They're averaging 65 points a game. Vols are respectively averaging 88. So I think there's a couple ways that this game will go. I think one possibility of this is Virginia just frustrates the hell out of us defensively, and this is like a 62-58 kind of win for Tennessee. Or if Tennessee just opens the floodgates offensively and we get like an 88-60 or a 90-72 type of route. I mean, they did beat Villanova a few days ago by 10, which was a decent win for them. But they played Coppin State, who's very mediocre, won by 17, and then they struggled against Campbell and scraped by a win, winning 65-56. So Tennessee should be able to take care of business tomorrow night. And then they play tomorrow night at 9:30 on CBS Sports Network, and then they'll play the winner of St. John Baylor on Friday.
I think Tennessee, if they have the depth, I think what we saw against Austin P. It is an ACC team, but I think Tennessee's going to have more guys than Virginia does. I'm looking at their roster. I mean, you got like Blake Buchanan and Andrew Road, who are guys that were been with the program, and then two transfers that have kind of been featured in their starting lineup: TJ Power and Elijah Saunders. Transfers in from ACC rival Duke, where they kind of saw many experimentally came to Virginia for some more playing time. So they got some guys, and it's going to be interesting to see Tennessee against those ACC guys. But yeah, going out to the Bahamas, man, interesting to see that with the time change, and excited for the guys to kind of get away and have a vacation, but also get some experience against some good teams. We saw how last year how those early tournaments, benefited Tennessee later in the season. So hopefully Tennessee can get some. It's not against the same kind of competition, obviously, against Kansas and teams like that.
Yeah,
but I mean it's obviously you still have a chance to go out there and get some valuable reps with your guys. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely not the Maui Invitational from last year, but you are playing against Baylor. Scott Drew is an excellent coach. They were national champions just a few years ago, and they were a preseason top 5 team going into the year before playing Gonzaga. And St. John's is coached by Rick Pitino. I mean, they're a very good team from top to bottom. And he's done an incredible job over there. So, I mean, this is good competition. This will be a good test for Tennessee, and this will be a very, early promising way to be able to get a marquee victory. But, Brando, we've already hit the hour mark. It's hard to believe that, but do you got any final thoughts?
No, not really any final thoughts. It's going to be cool. I'm off tomorrow, so going to be able to get a Vols basketball game in. Good 18 holes of golf to start the day. So excited about that. Some things to kind of decompress me from Tennessee football until Saturday. Back in Knoxville, noon game for all the people that have been complaining about all the nighttime slots. So 11 a.m. for the people back in the Central Time Zone. But Neyland one last time this season. 1 p.m. So
1 p.m. Eastern, so technically noon game.
Whatever. So. But yeah, last time in Neyland this year, I was didn't want to say that this episode because I thought that maybe we might play our self into a home game, but maybe later on down the road, good things come to those who wait. But one last game in Neyland, and basically like we said earlier, man, just go out here and blow these people out. The UTEP Miners, another team to send back to the coal mines, and take care of business, man. I think you go out there and put 70 points up. Show the committee you're pissed off, because last time that Josh Heupel tried to prove the committee wrong, I think he put up like 65 or 66 points against Missouri in 2022, and we ended up at Halfborough after that game, and that did not go well for me. So,
did not.
Yeah. So just. Yeah, score points, man. Score a lot of points, and I hope we see the Tennessee defense back this week. That's doesn't give up 20 again. So I swear, if we give up 2 touchdowns to this team is ass. So take care of business, and even though basketball is up and rolling, man, I'm not out on this football team yet, and I think some things can go our way. And as Vols fans, we all know to keep our cup on, be ready for the BVS. But I think that there's some math and some possibilities. There's a path for Tennessee to find their way into the playoffs, and hopefully things can go our way, man. Look out for those games we mentioned earlier, and hopefully we can, hate watch some teams and get Tennessee a college football playoff appearance. But Drew, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I'm very much looking forward to the basketball game tomorrow night against Virginia. As you know, big Tennessee basketball guy over here. Always have been, always will be. So should be great to see them play against a very solid opponent. Hopefully the Vols can take care of business on Saturday against Texas El Paso. Really need to make a statement win. I'm going to go with 63-6 for the Big Orange on Saturday, and that is the Tennessee Big Orange, not UTEP, because they also wear orange, for those that don't know. So, yeah, we'll see. And then, obviously, we'll try to run it back again. Hopefully, we can be able to get Rob and Lo to come on the next episode and try to get a whole entire panel. We'll break down and other people's thoughts than just myself and Brando to contribute. So, looking forward to that. And, Brando, we'll take it easy, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Good night and go Vols, man.